Algebra 2, Lesson 2-6, the quadratic formula. We have looked at where the quadratic formula comes from in the last video through Explore and Reason. We're going to look at example 1, solve quadratic equations. What values of x solve the equation? So let's look at part A. 3x squared minus 4x minus 9 is equal to 0. The quadratic formula, as we have looked at, which is x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is the quadratic formula. This provides the solutions of the quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 for a that's not equal to 0. So if you see this form where the quadratic equation is a standard form, then you can use a, b, and c to figure out x using quadratic formula quickly. So sometimes it saves a lot of steps and a lot of time just to use quadratic formula right away. Sometimes it's obvious. It's more obvious to solve it other ways by graphing or by factoring. But there are complex equations where it's just better to use the quadratic formula from the beginning. So in this case, this is not a perfect square, or if you have an a, right, and you know it's going to take a long time, you can just use a quadratic formula. So instead of using the process of completing the square, and you know that takes a little bit of time. So we're going to use a quadratic formula. First, we have to identify what a, b, and c are, right? A is 3, and then b is negative 4, c is negative 9. And remember that your form all has to be in this form where it's everything is equal to 0. If you have an equation, quadratic equation, that's equal to a different number, then you have to make this equal to 0 by adding or subtracting your number, and that will change your c. So depending on that mistake, you may have a different, you would probably have a different solution because your c would be different. Right? So make sure that it's equal to 0. And then identify a, b, and c. And then you're going to just plug it in to the quadratic formula. And this is called quadratic formula for a reason. Plug it in and you'll get the answer. That's it. So if you plug it in correctly, then, and if you simplify correctly, everything should be fine. Negative 4 would be just positive 4, plus or minus negative 4 squared would just be 16, minus 4 times 3 times negative 9. Everything together would just be 124. Yeah, because that would become addition. And then you divide it by 2 over 2 times 3, which is 6. And you will simplify your square root so that it's easier to see. And you can see if there are any greatest common factor that you can factor out. So that would be 2 times 2 plus or minus square root 31 over 6, and we can factor out 2 and 6 and simplify this fraction to just simply 2 plus or minus square root 31 over 3. So the solutions are 2 plus square root 31 over 3 and 2 minus square root 31 over 3. Okay, you have two solutions in this case. So that was part A. Let's go to the next part. Part B. How can you use the quadratic formula to solve x squared minus 9x plus 27 equals 0? So again, you're going to use the quadratic formula and plug in a, b, and c. In this case, your a is 1, b is negative 9, c is 27, and you plug it in. And in this case, you're going to have a square root of negative 27. That means you have an imaginary number, right? So when you simplify, don't forget to factor out I. If you just leave it as square root negative 27, that's not simplified, and it's not a real number. So you need to use I to indicate that it's a complex number. So now we have two complex solutions, 9 plus 3i squared 3 over 2, and 9 minus 3i squared 3 over 2. So simplify after you plug in all the numbers. Easy. So first of all, make sure you have the form right where it's equal to 0. And identify A, B, and C. And then you plug it in and you solve and simplify. And that should be it. So let's try number one. Solve using the quadratic formula. A, 2x squared plus 6x plus 3 equals 0. And B, 3x squared minus 2x plus 7 equals 0. Pause the video and see if you can do it by yourself. Come back when you're ready for answers. Okay, are you ready? All right, let's start looking at try number 1A. So I'm going to write the steps so that you can see if there is any step that is different, if you make any mistakes. Okay, so we start with this formula. Make sure you identify this as a standard form. It's equal to 0, so it's fine. Now we're going to identify A, B, and C, and then you just plug it in. X is equal to negative 6 plus or minus 6 squared minus 4AC all over 2A. And x is equal to negative 6 plus or minus 36 minus 24 all over 4. And that's equal to negative 6 plus or minus square root 12 all over 4. And you can simplify this. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So you can factor 2 out here. So negative 6 plus or minus 2 square root 3 over 4. Your greatest common factor 2. You can factor out 2 here and then simplify your fraction, right? So 2 times negative 3 plus or minus square root 3 all over 4. And you can make this as 2. Denominator equals 2. So finally, your answer should be negative 3 over 2 plus square root 3 over 2, or you can just leave it as a fraction. Negative 3 plus square root 3 over 2, or negative 3 minus square root 3 over 2. Okay, so I'm gonna write it here. A would be negative 3 over 2 plus or minus square root 3 over 2. Or you can write it as negative 3 plus square root 3 all over 2. And negative 3 minus square root 3 all over 2. Okay, so check your answers, see if you got it right. If you didn't, check the steps. Part B, in the same way, you're going to plug it into quadratic formula, and everything's fine. It's equal to 0. So A is 3, B is negative 2, C is 7. So you should get positive 1 over 3 plus or minus 2i square root 5 over 3. Or you can write it as 1 plus 2i square root 5 over 3. And 1 minus 2i square root 5 over 3. Okay, so in this case, you're going to have a negative number in your square root. Your b squared minus 4ac, the radicand, would be a negative number. So then you have to factor out I as an imaginary number and simplify. All right, so check your answers and see if you got it correct. If you got everything correct, great job. You understood example 1. It's just plugging into the quadratic formula, and then you're good. All right, we'll continue with example 2 in the next video.